How do you do, folks? Welcome yet again to more Banjo questions answered. Good answers? I don't know, but you'll get answers if you ask questions. Depends who you ask, I guess, the quality of the answer. As always, let me know if the audio quality is okay. If the video quality is okay, if there's anything going on that's a little funky, we can fix that. If it's too quiet, if it's too loud, all that stuff can be fixed. You just gotta let me know. You know? Get this a little closer. We have a question. Okay. Can you please speak a little bit about improving tone as a beginner, low, intermediate, as well as the most common mistakes you see people making in regards to tone? Yeah, definitely. Something I think about a lot. Although as I play this, I think to myself, this tone could be better. So I got my own stuff to think about. When it comes to tone, there's so many factors, you know, like the picks and the strings and the banjo. But it's true that most of it has to do with the way that you play. So, you know, if this is the classic example, but if you give, you know, if you gave Earl any banjo, it would sound great. There would be great tone, right? And I think a big way to get into working on your tone, first of all, you got to make sure you're really listening to what it sounds like. It's kind of an obvious thing. You wouldn't be wondering about this if you hadn't been listening, but you really want to listen to what it sounds like, and then when you make any changes to what you do, you want to listen to what the changes, you know, cause. You don't want to think about it in broad general terms like, that sounds bad, that sounds good, blah, blah, blah. You want to think about it like, I'm getting a little bit too much pick noise if I do it like that, and if I do this, it's a little bit too thin, and if I do, you know, find some ways to describe to yourself what you're hearing, right? Because, for instance, if you play one way and it sounds like this, and you play another way and it sounds like this, you don't want to just say, well, I like one and I don't like the other. You want to know what about it is happening, because then you can say, well, when I put my hand here, it sounds like this, and when I put my hand here, it sounds like this. That might sound like a small thing, but you're building up a vocabulary, being able to qualify what it is that you're doing. So it's a good thing to think about. So when just some general stuff that people do, I think early on, tone-wise, that is not helpful. They don't have their hand in a specific place; they just kind of put it wherever, right? Depending on what you want to sound like. If you're trying to play just bluegrass, just Earl Scruggs, J.D. Crowe, that kind of thing, you mostly just want to have your fingers where you're actually hitting the strings. Probably, I want to call that. It's kind of hard to see from the bridge, but maybe anywhere from 1.5 inches to 2 inches, 2.5 inches away from the bridge. Because I'll see some people that'll play like this, and they might play all the right stuff, right? If I played all the right stuff to sound good playing bluegrass banjo, I could play this. And that's fine. That's actually not the worst thing in the world. For me, it's definitely not what I want to sound like, but whatever. But that's because my hand was smack dab in the middle. Or worse, somebody tries to play, you know, Foggy Mountain Breakdown with their hand up here. That's just not what you want. If you can get it just 1.5 inches or a little bit more away from the bridge, and you got to listen to what it sounds like and see if you like what that changes, then you might enjoy that tone better. Another thing is getting your picks perpendicular to the strings, meaning when my picks actually hit the strings, they're not coming at it from an angle like this. They're coming at it like across the strings like that, which can be challenging because you might then have the urge to do this, like J.D. Crowe. And good luck to you if you can, but that's really not a healthy thing to do. So some combination of the angle of the banjo and the angle of your wrist, and then the angle of the picks that you can rotate a little bit, you want to get it so the picks are coming straight up, more or less. Maybe not exactly, but pretty close if you can. Yep. Bill says measuring where. You're just talking about from the bridge. Measuring from the bridge out towards the, But to make it even easier, just look at some of the hands of some of the people that you like they're playing of. So like Earl Scruggs and JD Crow. See what things you can pull from what they're doing. The thing JD Crow does, maybe not a great idea. But seeing how far away you are from the bridge can be helpful. So those are the two things that I think are the most common issues is hand placement and then just the angle, right? And then another thing can be how hard you play, right? Because I can do all those things right, and I want to play Foggy Mountain Breakdown, and I play, you can't hear anything, or you play way too hard. I'm not going to do that for the sake of your ears, but and that can be a huge issue. So again, you want to literally listen to yourself and try playing really quietly and get a little louder until you reach the point that you like where it sounds, and that maybe should be your regular, playing volume. The way certain people practice, the way certain people practice is kind of like their inside voice. You know what I mean? And I play like, that didn't sound bad, right? That's all the right notes, and it wasn't terrible. It wasn't like, it wasn't bad. It was great, but it was fine. It wasn't great. You listen to banjo players that we really like, and they're doing one extra thing there, and they're kind of digging in, and that actually changes the tone. It's not just about volume. You have to get some volume to get to that tone, but if you think about the fact that the whole instrument is vibrating, and that vibrates the air, and that's where the actual sound comes from, you actually want to be able to vibrate the instrument. So if I just do this, you're vibrating parts of the banjo, but you're not, what you really want is to get enough of it vibrating that the actual wood gets to have some say in, what the tone is, right? When people talk about the tone having to do with different types of wood and everything, if you're not even getting the wood itself to vibrate in a meaningful way, then you're never going to find out what different wood sounds like. So you want to dig in a little bit more. That kind of thing. So think about that with the tone, hand position, and volume. That's really all there is to it, honestly. But then beyond that, you can get into like different picks and different banjos and stuff. That's kind of another subject, actually. Hope that's helpful. If that's not, then feel free to ask for clarification. Let's see. It's funny, I've been messing around with my own setup stuff today, and just hearing my banjo now, it's like I'm just not enjoying the tone the way I usually do. So it feels weird to answer questions about tone, but sometimes I feel like I get the tone that I like. Maybe not right now, but just not quite. Okay, Jonathan says, I know you talked about capos last time, but I'm having the string slip under the capo when I bend close to the capo. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, depending on how close you're bending to the capo, that might not be avoidable. If it's like within a fret or two, like if the capo's here and you're bending on around this area, that may not be something you can avoid. But one thing you could think about is, like, so if I put on the capo here, so what Jonathan's talking about is you bend a string and it slides underneath the capo and gets stuck. If I do that, that's tough. So let's say I want to bend here. When I do that, let's say I'm bending with one finger. I might need to like actually bring the string back when I'm done, you know, instead of just going and just leaving it, you know. Might have to quickly just bring it down. That's possible. The other thing is when you bend, if you're using more than one finger to bend it, you might be putting too much stress on the whole string. Whereas if I just bend it from here with one finger here, then this little fulcrum is still doing its thing. Whereas if I do this, I'm actually moving more of the string at a time. So maybe try just bending with one finger if that's becoming an issue. But cranking down on the capo may be the answer. Hey, Brian Purdy donated $5. Thanks for the tip on tone. That is mighty generous. That's super cool. Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate that. I hope that was helpful. And I mean it. Please ask for clarification if that has not been helpful, because I do aim to be helpful, if possible. I've learned the scales for different chords. Then I looked at a tab and they played notes in the G chord that are not in the scale. Can you talk about that? Yeah, that happens all the time. And sometimes there's an explanation and sometimes there's not really one. But, and I really hope you're enjoying my cat rolling around on the floor behind me. So, yeah, if you think about what is in each key, right? Like, let's just say we're in the key of G, just G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. That's all there is. But then you hear somebody play something like, sounds very normal, sounds like bluegrass, and it's got an F, not in the key of G. Well, there is a simple explanation for that, and is that we're turning that G into a G7, meaning that it's G, B, D, F. And that F sounds like it wants to go to E. What I just explained to you might not mean anything, and that doesn't mean that there's nothing wrong with you. It just means that you haven't learned that part of music theory yet. So my overarching answer to that whole thing is you're not always going to have just the notes in the key that you're talking about at one time. There might be other notes that make you want to go to a different chord, or maybe just spices up what's happening. It's kind of exceptions to the rule. You could think about it that way. But it really is kind of on a case-by-case basis, right? It's not necessarily always going to be one explanation for that. For instance, if I play this, you know, if I'm in G, right? And I played this, that's a B flat. That is not in the key of G, but everything I just played sounds fine. So why am I playing a note that's not in the key of G? Well, in this case, you could think of it as two different things. That B flat sounds kind of like the blues, right? Well, the blues scale so it's just I'm just using a different scale over that chord. Or you could think about it as I'm going from B flat. It's a nice little pathway from a weird note to a note that doesn't sound so weird, right? So these are kind of I don't know. Yeah, it's gonna be a case by case basis for explanations about each of these exceptions to the rule. But rest assured that if you learn more about music theory, then it's gonna make sense to you. I promise. You know what I mean? Now I must rudely interrupt this live stream for about 10 seconds because my cat is waiting to leave the room, because apparently my cat doesn't want to listen to the banjo. So in a oh so unprofessional way, I'm just going to stand up and let my cat out. All right, and that's all it took. More questions. Why not? So let's see. I hear mandolin great Manalist Bush comes to mind. Often play a few measures of 6/8 timing in tunes with 2/4 or 4/4 time, usually against the 5 chord. Could you demonstrate this on the banjo? I'm not exactly sure what you mean. A few measures of 6/8. Do you mean like they're playing triplets? And if so, I might be able to do that on the banjo. I guess I haven't really thought about doing triplets like that. Generally, when we talk about time signatures, we're not. It's just not. Usually, people don't talk about using another time signature over another one, kind of at the same. It's, you know, I think I know what you're saying, but if that's what you mean, like triplets during regular 4/4, like we're playing. Not triplets, actually 6 notes in a measure. Right. Well, if it's 6 notes in a measure of 4/4, for instance, then that's 2 triplets. 2 groups of 3. I mean, if you're saying that the 6 notes, do the 6 notes happen over the course of the whole measure, right? If so, that's 2 triplets. You could think about it as being 6/8, I guess, at a different tempo, but I don't know anybody who puts them in those terms. So I'm not totally sure. Hopefully that's what we're talking about. So maybe I'll circle back to that if that's what you mean. 6 notes in a measure, 2 groups. Yeah, I mean that seems like that's what that is. It's not really something people do on the banjo all that often. Not in Scruggs style anyway. Kind of like Bela's Slipstream. Yeah, I mean, if you mean that there's that one little section, I don't know the actual tune very well, but I know what you're talking about. I mean, one way that this happens frequently is Don Reno will do that kind of thing, right? But the way Bela's doing it is kind of more like something kind of like that, right? I'd kind of have to think about that because I don't really have a lot of triplet material per se. But I'll think about that. I'll put that in the back of my mind, and maybe I'll have some thoughts for you shortly. It's possible. Words of Hope and Comfort says play Foggy Mountain Breakdown, and then again says play Foggy Mountain Breakdown, and then again says play Foggy Mountain Breakdown. Well, maybe I should play Foggy Mountain Breakdown. Actually, I'm not going to, but if you'd like to hear something, you can politely request in the way that you might if you were, for instance, in the same room. But I think if we were all in the same place together, I don't think you would probably just say, play Foggy Mountain Breakdown. And if I didn't respond, I don't think you'd just repeat it. I think you'd ask, probably, right? That seems like a polite thing to do. But maybe I'll play it later. Can you speak about your right hand when you play single note and single string? Yeah. So I don't like there to be a huge difference between when I'm playing Scruggs stuff. Sorry about the tuning, folks. I don't like there to be a huge difference in the position, right? Because I want to be able to go between those things quickly. Like, for instance, in a tune like Pike County Breakdown, just to keep that's got both in there rapid fire. Sorry, I'm just watching my own hand to see if there's anything I can tell you. So yeah, that's what I think what I'd say. I mean, you want to keep everything relaxed. Here's what is a risk when you're doing single string stuff is you can get into this like bouncy hand thing, like, which is not the end of the world. But when you think about actually hitting the string, you're trading, you know, like when you play Scruggs style, for instance, you can't really just be doing this all the time, right? You just have to kind of keep your hand more or less in one place. Maybe you bounce a little bit, but it's not that much. When you then go to, and that's how you're doing your single string stuff, you know, at that speed, it's fine. It's just, if you want to play faster, that's gonna be really hard to, you know, it's just, maybe that's just me, but I think it's gonna make things really difficult for you. So I would be careful with that. I would try to keep your hand more or less in the same position without locking it in there and being so tense also. That kind of thing. I think that's probably my best advice for that. Okay. So, see, been playing for about 4 months. Curious if you have tips on executing good pull-offs. I've heard a few different strats, but yeah, well, one of the first things you want to do is try to play a pull-off without playing the other note first, right? So if you're doing like a pull-off, let's just say from the second fret to the open string here on the first string here. Open second fret of the open string, yeah. Right? Well, you might want to start just pulling off and seeing if that actually gets the sound you want, because when that happens, when you play it, that's not what's causing the sound after the pull off. What's causing the sound is just the pull off, right? Because if I just lift my finger, right? Maybe there's a little sound, but not enough, right? And if I do that after playing the note, then it dies, right? So if I can practice just doing the pull off, then that's great. Same thing if I'm doing a pull off like from 2 to 3 here. I want to be able to hear the note. It doesn't need to be super loud, but I want something. And it's really just that I'm kind of winding up and letting go of the string. And then when I do it, when I play, right? And it can be good to do it really as quick as you can. You want to, it's a very explosive sound. So yeah, try doing some of these pull-offs. You know, try and do it without playing the first note, because the first note is not totally as important. So that's my best advice for that, I think. Let's see. What is the name that you play on most of the endings of your? That is a tune I wrote called Knotty Pine. Knotty, like knotted, knotty pine. Yeah, I wrote that and recorded it a couple of years ago for an album that was with another band that never really came out, and whatever, it's fine. But I have the recording, so I figured I'd use it for that. You can listen to the whole tune if you look on my YouTube channel, Knotty Pine. You'll find it. And maybe one day I'll show people how to play it. If I remember, I don't think I even could play it. And then the part you all know comes in with the... I don't even know. Tough to say. That's the ending, right? That's all I remember, really. Any advice for intermediate over 66 years young when it comes to practice quality? It's well, I think my advice for that is kind of the same as for anyone. You know, I don't think anyone's strategy should change depending on how on their age or any of that. Not that I'm diminishing that fact, because I think what happens is, I think there are a lot of things in life that are, depending on how old you are or whatever it is, it changes how you want to do something for a lot of reasons, like, I don't know, weightlifting or something like that. But I think with music, actually, you kind of want to do the same stuff. And so for me, that means at the very beginning of all the stuff that I'm doing, just making sure, like, okay, can I just please be honest with myself about what things sound like? Can I say, that's good enough to move on, or that's not good enough to move on? You know, and can I say it to myself in a way that's not going to make me feel bad, right? If I can just say, that's not quite there yet, I think I can make that better, you know, and then be happy about the fact that I'm the kind of person that would take the time. Wow, how cool. But beyond that, repetition is really important. It's like, how many times can you stand to play something? That's really the more you do that, the better you're going to be. Playing things really slowly with a metronome. If you are interested, you can check out my metronome lesson on YouTube. Playing really slowly with a metronome, so you're really careful and say, did I hit every note I was supposed to? Did I hit it just right, or did I kind of flub this one? Do I flub this note all the time, but actually I'm trying to do it this way? And so you have to really be careful about that. Beyond that, I think setting goals and saying, play for a little bit and see what kind of progress you make, and then say, okay, based on what kind of progress I'm making, I'd like to be able to do this by tomorrow or a week from today or whatever it is. And be really realistic about what you can do. But think about it this way. If I practice and things go pretty well and I learn a little bit, I might not come back to the banjo the next day or the next day or the next day. But if I say, okay, I did this much, I think I can learn the rest of this tune by tomorrow or the day about whatever it is, then I'm probably going to come back and try to finish that up because I've got a goal, right? But you just have to be careful, because if you set a goal like, okay, I want to be a professional banjo player by tomorrow, like, it's just not realistic. So you just got to put a little thought into what you can do, or how you've been making progress so far, and then make goals based on that. And then hopefully those goals are going to encourage you to practice every day, because again, with repetition, practicing every day is the best thing you can do for your playing. If you're not practicing every day, you're leaving money on the table in terms of progress. And I don't mean that to give anybody anxiety about the amount that they practice. It's just that maybe now's a good time for some people. Some people have the time now. I'm lucky enough to always have the time, because this is what I do for a living, but some people don't usually have the time. Maybe now people have enough time to do this. How can I get rid of pick noise? There are a couple ways, which I think are helpful. You'll have to see if it works for you. But one is, think about how much of your pick is hitting the strings. Because if your pick is hitting the string and then sliding across it, that's not great. Can you hear that? There's noise there. So if my pick hits the string, slides across it, you can kind of hear that. So maybe just get a little bit of the pick, just the tip, to actually hit the string. Right? Also, when you do hit the string, you want to just play through the string. You don't want to hit the string and then hit it. Notice that? That sound is just going to happen whether or not I play the note. But if I do that, and then play the note. Right? Then you can hear it, and then you can hear the note. So you want it all be at one time. It was there. The pick noise is there. It's going to happen. You just want to be able to overpower it with your own playing. Not by playing too loud, but by just playing through the string very decisively. Foggy Mountain Breakdown is like the Freebird of bluegrass banjo. In a way, yeah. Although I think I enjoy playing Foggy Mountain Breakdown generally more than people enjoy playing Freebird. We're lucky in that way. Lara says, I'm working on improving my blues chops. Do you recommend any scale and chord exercises or technique building exercises to help? Yeah, I mean, the main thing with the blues is the blues scale, right? So if you don't know the blues scale, then you gotta know the blues scale. But it sounds like you probably do if you're working on your blues chops. What I have not done yet is made a lesson on the blues scale or pentatonic scales, which I probably should do at some point. But I would guess that somebody's done something with that so far. But at any rate, I'll probably do that soon. But anyway, you're going to want to learn the blues scale and then obviously be able to move up and down it. Single string is probably the way to go for that, for me anyway. And once you can do that, you know, you can just kind of improvise within that. If you have some vocabulary, like some stuff you've learned from albums or whatever. But if not, then you kind of actually want to probably take some time to learn some licks, right? Learn some actual blues licks. Like, I don't know what that is. I don't know where it came from, but I've learned enough things that use something kind of like that I now can play that. Or, right? David Benedict just subscribed, and he said, "Yo, Eli, stick that capo on the 4th fret." Perhaps I shall. Perhaps maybe a little in a little bit. I'll do a little playing in the key of B. David knows how much I like the key of B. I love it. Everybody should check out David Benedict if you're interested in mandolin or bluegrass in general. He's a fantastic mandolin player and teacher and all kinds of cool stuff. And also plays for the band Mile 12, one of my favorite bluegrass bands. So check out Mile 12. But anyways, with the blues stuff, you know, might want to, you know, just my first thought with the blues thing is like I would go on YouTube and search like blues guitar licks and see if you can learn those licks on the banjo, right? You could. One thing I do have that's bluesy related right now is the J.D. Crowe bluesy 3/4 backup stuff, which, you know, you don't need to use those exact licks, but just the all that stuff you can kind of retrofit to your needs, you know. So anyway, blues scale, and you want to hopefully know it in a couple different positions. If you can. That was something like it anyway. And single string, right? And then just see, also you want to be able to move up and down it pretty quickly. So I think I would just, sorry. You know, I would do that kind of again and again. But that also makes me think that I should do some kind of blues scale lesson on YouTube. That would be a good idea. So be on the lookout for that. Eli, will you do a video explaining a little bit Sammy Sheeler signature licks? Perhaps. I should do a lesson about Sammy Sheeler in general, probably, just because he's one of my favorite banjo players, certainly. But I will say that, let's see, what have I done? Have I done Sammy? I did a tune called Daddy's Dream that was a Sammy Sheeler thing, so maybe there's some stuff in there that you like. Well, one thing that I really like that he does is he does this like that. But yeah, I'll do a video about Seamus Sheeler stuff. That sounds good. I'm a lefty, but I have a righty, like a righty banjo. Is it possible to change it over to a lefty? Is it possible by a lefty? I mean, if you do, you would have to take this and move it here, right? Which means drilling another hole, and then you got a hole on the other side of the banjo. If you do that, then it's... Well, no, it's not really possible because you still have... You've got the hump on this side of the... Yeah, it's not really possible to... I mean, unless you were... What you could do is get a lefty neck, right? Because a lefty neck you could just put right on there. That's not really going to make a huge difference, right? You'd have to put the tailpiece... I mean, the armrest on the side, but... Yeah, but I would look for... I mean, look for a lefty banjo if you can, but if you can't, look for a lefty neck, and then replace the neck on any old banjo, right? 8 months learning here. How about Cumbanchero? Yeah, I don't know El Cumbanchero. Seems like a good one to learn. People seem to like that one, but I'll take a look. How often do you adjust your truss rod? I've noticed you never have a cover on your banjo. Yeah, I don't have the cover on the truss rod here, and I really just I adjust it kind of frequently just because I'm always tinkering with the banjo. That's why I don't like the tone, is because I tinkered too much. Careful of that. So I do frequently, but I don't suggest that you do, because your banjo probably sounds fine and you don't need that kind of stress in your life. You know what I mean? It's just not really worth the risk, I think. You could mess up your banjo doing it if you don't really know what you're doing. So careful with that too. How many right fingers when you play single? Oh, like when I'm playing single string, which fingers? So I personally use all 3 fingers for single string stuff. Not always exactly the same way. But the kind of more common thing is to just use thumb and index, right? And when I do something like that, I would do thumb, index, thumb, middle. And for me, I just find that it makes it faster because these 2 fingers have some time to rest in between each thing, right? I don't have to just do alternating. You know, the thumb is okay to keep going over and over and over again, but the other 2 fingers, you give them a little bit of rest and you can, play a little fast. That doesn't mean you can't play fast with just 2. I mean, I often play with just 2. It's just there are moments when the 3rd finger gets involved to make things a little bit easier. So that is what I would suggest for that. Did I miss a question, by the way? No, I don't think I missed something. Okay. Let's see. Any advice, hints for using middle right-hand finger on inside strings? And actually, Brian just asked you, who's playing single string, do you use middle finger on the inside strings? So I'll answer both of those. Yes. So I do use the middle finger on inside strings, meaning, well, actually at times, all 4 of the strings that you would play on, not the 5th string. But and my suggestion for that is to intentionally practice using that finger on the strings. And so if I was doing single string stuff, the way I'll practice this is I'll do thumb, index, thumb, middle on each string, See if you can make that a little more visible to you. Right? And if you wanted to make that a little more targeted for that finger, then just do thumb, middle. That's not super easy to do, right? But if you practice it, it'll get easier. And the other thing would be practicing, like, for instance, rolls that use that, like a forward roll on the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string. The tune Whitewater, the Bela Fleck tune. That's the B part, right? It has this. That's 4, 3, 2, 3. So if you learn a tune like that, then you're going to want to practice that kind of thing and maybe just do. That's what I would do. That's what I do when I practice this sort of thing, actually. Don't we all love the key of B, second only to G? Yeah. I would also add B flat. I love B flat. A is fine. When you put your capo on, can you talk about where you place the capo in reference to the fret, and how do you know how much to crank down? Well, so I put it as close as I possibly can. Let's go to B. Let's do it. I go to as close to the capo as to the fret as I possibly can, right? You can't even see the fret. You can see the fret. Now you can't even see it. So it's really there. It's not on top of it, but it's really close. Ooh, somebody did ask for a capo suggestion. That's what I missed. I use a Page capo because I haven't gotten around to buying an Elliott, because I think those are probably the best you can get. They're expensive, but probably worth it. I'm really just have been too lazy to order one. So Elliott is what I would probably recommend. So you get it real close. I have just kind of gotten used to a certain amount of tension, which is really not that much. You can test it. It really doesn't need to be any stronger than... than able to, like, get the strings ringing, right? If it's too loose, not right. Just a little tighter and you get that. So that's really all I need. Having some trouble with the old tuning today. I guess we're in B now. Let's see. Is there a good way to substitute or play a role instead of playing a 3rd fret G string double pull off at the beginning part of J.D. Crow? Rebecca. J.D. Crow. I didn't do J.D. Crow's. I did Jim Mills' version of Rebecca, right? Is that what you mean? Or do you mean that? Or beginning part. You mean that? You could just do a. So he's talking about. So this is the version he's talking about. It's a good thing I'm in B now. Otherwise, I couldn't play Rebecca. That right there. You can instead just go. Right? Just go straight to your open G. Slide. Or man. tough out there. Let's see. Any suggestions on banjo pickups? You could try the EMG. Is that EMG banjo pickups? I think I've got a set of those. I'll tell you this: I don't really like pickups that much. I don't have a lot of trust in banjo pickups. Clip-on mics are cool. Some combination of a pickup and a clip-on mic is probably cool, but and I know a lot of people that get really good sound out of that. But it's just so out of my world. Like it's not. I don't really have any, and I don't have enough experience with it. You know what I mean? But EMG, they make good stuff. I know a lot of people that like the EMG pickups. But think about a clip-on mic. That's another way to do it too. Sorry, I just had to make sure I still know how to play the banjo. Slarge, yeah, man, yeah, David. David, any tunes in B you want to hear? Let's see, what finger and thumb picks? So I use Sheeler thumb picks, finger picks, Sammy Sheeler finger picks, and a Dunlop Ultex thumb pick. It's the yellow ones. Yeah, I've used this combination for probably like a year now. I've switched around a bunch, and this is what I like. The Sheeler ones are a little expensive. They're like $35, but certainly worth it. And somebody else asked about like pick gauge. I really don't know anything about that. Unfortunately, they just make the one size for these ones, so I like that too. As a beginner, I'm playing a lefty gold tone, open back with 5. Is it possible to get a good bluegrass tone? Is it possible? Because the real question here is it possible to get good bluegrass tone with an open back? If by good bluegrass tone you mean in the style of Earl Scruggs, because that's kind of where it all came from, not really. Just trying to be as straight about it as I can. You can probably get amazing tone, and there are people that do get amazing tone with an open back. It's just never going to sound much like Earl Scruggs or J.D. Crowe or those folks. If that doesn't matter to you, then great. If that really matters to you, then yeah, you're going to want to get something with a resonator. Just because that's kind of the function of, that's how the instrument works. But if you like the sound that the open back has, then you should totally stick with it. If you're wondering if it'll ever evolve into anything, I mean, not that this is great tone per se, but if it's never going to sound anything like this, right? Even though in the wider world of music, it might sound amazing, just in terms of the fact that open backs sound really cool. Any tips on increasing consistency in the right hand? After 7 years in practice, I'm still missing strings on occasion. Me too. I try to practice as much as possible with the metronome. And I try to be really picky about what I think is good enough before I make it a little faster or move on or whatever it is. I try to, but I make mistakes all the time. So, but I would make a lot more mistakes if I wasn't practicing, right? So I will just put on a metronome, and I did this today. I started learning Jim Mills. I'm gonna actually, for a video I'm making, it's gonna be everything Jim Mills plays on a whole track, right? Which is gonna be kind of cool. But it's a little at a time from one of his solo records, and the banjo kickoff. We'll see if I play it right. I just learned it today, but we'll see how it goes. Something like this. Even that is not quite right. There's some missed notes there. It was fine, but it just didn't hit exactly what I wanted to play. So the way I would practice that, and we'll practice that probably after this live stream is over, and how I practiced it when I learned it this morning, was that I learned maybe the first 4 measures, or let's just say I got to the point where I learned the whole first break or whatever like that. And I played along with the recording like this. Right? And then if I got that all right, then I would move it up just a little bit faster. If I got that all right, I'd move it up just a little bit faster. And after I'd done that for a while, it was great. And I could play through the whole break and first verse and chorus without making any mistakes. But what I just played is actually a really good example of why that's not enough, because then when you come back later, you may have learned it 100% before. When you come back later, you might only remember it like 85%. And then tomorrow, I'm probably only going to remember like 70% of it. So I kind of have to start over from the beginning. But since I still remember it like 70% of the way, it's only going to take me 30% of the time to get it back up, right? You see how it works. I bet you didn't think banjo players knew that kind of math. But so what that all means is don't be afraid to continually just slow it down and work it back up to speed. And every time you do that, it's going to take less time, right? Like every time I have to slow something down all the way to the beginning and then work it back up, it's going to take less time because I just know it better. Until there are just going to be some things that I probably don't really need to, like test myself, but it's unlikely that I'm going to mess up the beginning of Cripple Creek unless I'm really nervous or something. But just because I played it so many times, right? And so you need to simulate that, because I didn't necessarily prepare Cripple Creek for this live stream, but you can prepare for any situation by taking that into your own hands. So yeah, that consistency comes really with some very deliberate practice. So make sure you're being very deliberate. Let's see. Can you speak to getting a more interesting sound out of your rolls when you're first starting and your rolls sound monotonous and flat? Maybe a particular roll exercise with a demonstration on making it sound more dynamic and bluegrass. Yeah. What you can try doing. Yeah, try this. So let's just say you're playing a forward roll. In theory, that's just kind of straight ahead. There's no, there's no real emphasis on any note. Well, try putting emphasis on a particular note. Like I'm gonna put emphasis only on my index finger, and then just my middle finger. Sorry. Or whatever it is. And then you could say, well, I'm going to emphasize every fourth note, like the beginning of every grouping of 4 notes, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And none of these are how you want to play all the time. You just want to be able to do it, right? And it's just going to make you more flexible. You could come up with all kinds of weird games, like I'm going to emphasize every third note. I don't know if I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. See, that doesn't work because it's always gonna be the same one, right? So every, yeah, that doesn't work either. Maybe over second note. There's a lot of different ways you can spice it up by just emphasizing different notes. Any ideas for a brief kickoff in a song in G where this starts with a 2/5 slide on the 4th string with alternating rolls? Well, I'd have to know what chords are in it, and I'd have to know what the melody is, because so far I just kind of, that's my 2/5 slide, 4th string, alternating roll. Yeah, I'd have to know the melody and the chords to be able to do a kickoff for a song. Debbie says, just a tip for the capos is to change the sleeve often because they get dented. That is true. You can either change them. What I like to do also is you can rotate the sleeve. You can kind of like twist it so that there's a part of it that hasn't been dented by the strings or whatever. That can be very helpful. What number string? Like what gauge strings do I use? I use the GHS. Let's see if I can pull up. It's not 9 or 10. It's actually 9.5. So 9.5, 11, 12, 20, 9.5. But 9 is fine too. I don't want to go above 10 on the first and the fifth string. Don't want to go above 11 on the second string. And I don't want to go above 13 on the third string. And I don't want to go above 20 on the fourth string. Anything else is kind of fine. I just don't want to go above those numbers. Slowing down is what I'm doing. Just have to be patient. Yeah, patient is definitely the key. And then, you know, being patient, it definitely takes time. And then you have to be kind of reasonable with yourself about what it is that you can remember. Because I think for me, I'll practice okay, so a couple days ago I was practicing single string stuff a lot, and I kind of got my stuff ready for that. Like I was good to go with single string stuff. And then today, last day or two, I've just been playing this banjo, which isn't really set up for single string stuff, and I was playing really Scruggsy stuff and just learning, like, just not doing any of that stuff I practiced a couple days ago. And I went to just play a couple of it right now, you know, like, I mean, I'm moving a little bit, but like that doesn't feel as comfortable as it did a couple days ago. I'm kind of barely making it happen. So I just have to be realistic about the fact that it was fine a couple days ago, but if I don't practice it again, it's not going to stick. So being patient is good. And then also just being realistic about like which of the things that you can do are currently likely to be ready to go, right? Only some of those things are going to be right at your fingertips. That's the case for me anyway. Do you use double thumb or thumb index more, or do you interchange them? So what he's talking about right there is there's a certain type of lick like this one, or so the double and during those first two notes are with the thumb, right? But you could play that thumb index, right? Thumb index. You could play a banjo in tune. But I will generally I do not interchange them, meaning I don't use either one for the same situation. For an actual, like, you know, the time I'd actually use the fingering like that would be during like a Scruggs lick or JD Crow lick or something like that, where it's usually on either the fourth string or the third string for a lick like that. There aren't too many licks, you know, that would use it. It's just usually that kind of thing, right? That's that Terry Bachman, right? But when I'm doing like other single string stuff, right? Like there's not really ever a reason to do double thumb in a situation like that. So if it's not like a specifically Scruggs lick type of situation, I'm probably not going to do double thumb. But if it is, then I probably am. Yeah. Hello from Brazil. Hello from Maine. Brazil sounds nice. It's kind of cold today in Maine. How often you change strings? I'd probably change them every once a week or once every week and a half. Not so much these days, just because I'm not playing so many gigs. But I find that if I have them longer than a week, then it just doesn't sound the way I like at a gig or something like that. I know some people wait way longer than that. Like people wait 6 months to change strings, and if you like what that sounds like, then great. I'm a little neurotic about it, so if it doesn't sound exactly like what I want, then I tinker too much and all that. You know, if I change my strings, then I usually say, oh yeah, that sounds better. I like what that is. That's great. So maybe too often, but I really enjoyed the syncopation discussion and examples in your gnome lesson. Please talk more about syncopation. I like the request for study of Sammy Sheeler's playing. Great syncopation. True. Yeah, so the thing with syncopation, it can be a little hard to Dave, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't know what you're referring to. Syncopation is a little bit hard to show somebody exactly how to do it. It's easy to say what it is. It's just the accented notes or the melody notes happening on the upbeat, right? Like if I'm playing, you know, those are the downbeats that I'm kind of accenting there, right? But then you'll hear sometimes the accent. If I only, here's one way to do it. If I only accent my ring finger, but I play the same thing, you know, let's say I play something like Fireball Mail. You know, if I want to syncopate that, let's just say I only accent my middle finger. Right? That actually gives you a little bit of a, you know. If I just accent my index finger on that tune, you know what I mean? Now what if I do one, a little bit of one, a little bit of the other? No, sorry. You know, now I'm confusing myself, but you see what I mean? You might want to spend a little time rigorously saying, I'm just going to accent one finger through the entire tune, and then pick and choose the moments when you want to accent that finger, right? That's more or less a good way to get into it. But another good way to do it is like to use one roll pattern, right? Like just a forward roll, because if we're living in this world of 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And I'm playing 3-note rolls, like with a forward roll. That's Don Reno's version of Cumberland Gap, which if you play like Earl, right? But this is Don Reno's because he just plays just the forward roll. So if I just play up and down a scale, for instance, with just one roll, then the notes that are in that melody that I'm playing are going to sometimes be on an on beat and sometimes going to be on an off beat, right? So that's another way to get into it. Any suggestions for a noticeable tailpiece ringing / overtones? Yeah, one of the things, so you may notice, we'll see if, yeah, you see this little dot here, that's a little piece of felt. When I close it, goes over that, and it's a little bit of it dampens things just a tiny bit. You don't want to dampen things a lot, but it dampens things just a tiny bit. which can help reduce some buzz or overtone or something. So like you don't necessarily want to stuff something too much in there or under it or anything. You don't want to do too much, but you might want to put just a little something here where it meets, because that's often a problem. Some people take the cover off also to solve that. That helps too. But then I will also check, make sure everything's really tight. Not really tight, but everything's not, rattling and everything. Rodrigo, unfortunately, I don't know any Brazilian tunes. I wish I did. I don't. Hello from Czech Republic. Hello. How's it going? Any chance you could do a clinch mount backstep lesson someday? I've been learning it, but there are a lot of idiosyncrasies in Stanley that I think would be interesting to look into. I think that's totally true because the way I usually play it is not the way Ralph Stanley played it, because most people seem to play it these days kind of a... Something like that. Really cool, huh? Yeah, so that's obviously not what Ralph Stanley did, and I don't really know how Ralph Stanley did it, just because I haven't looked into it. So maybe I should do that, because it would definitely be cool to have both sides of that, kind of the modern look and also the original. Quite frustrating. Can you play much frailing? I don't do any frailing and I don't do any climber. I don't know anything about either of those, unfortunately. But Clifton Hicks does. He's a guy on YouTube that does that kind of stuff. Wald Guy says, you have a truss rod end cover off your banjo. Do you adjust that? I sure do. Yeah, I adjust it pretty regularly just because I'm always kind of tinkering with it. You don't really have to. You don't have to. You probably shouldn't. I probably shouldn't, but I do. Can you touch on an improvisation or playing songs you do not know in a jam? So this is something that gets brought up a lot, and I think kind of the best that I've come up with way to explain how that works is you kind of always want to be learning new songs so that when something comes up in a jam that you don't know, you can hear in that song similarities between the other songs that are going on, right? Because, as an example, if you want to play, let's say somebody wants to, let's say you know Fireball Mail. Which just starts with, right? And then somebody says, let's play 9-Pound Hammer, but you don't know that. And they kick it off, and you say, hey, that kind of sounds like... And then they say, okay, now let's play Gonna Settle Down, that other Flat and Scruggs tune. And the melody that they're singing sounds kind of like... to begin with. Or Little Georgia Rose, or Roseville, Kentucky. Or a million songs that start with just that being the first note of the melody. Or let's say you've learned Blue Ridge Cabin Home. And then somebody wants to play Ain't Nobody Gonna Miss Me When I'm Gone, which starts, the melody sounds like, or something like that. If you know enough songs that start in a certain way, you're going to start to hear that similarity, and you're say, oh, I know a song that kind of starts the same way. Maybe I'll start my solo the same way. And it all just builds from there. The more familiar you are with the songs you do know, and you continue to learn songs, the easier it's going to be to pick up new songs when you're at a jam. And and you know, it might be worth just like picking around on your banjo for a second and saying, all right, what's the melody note? What they're singing? Is that, or is it okay, great, or is it maybe it's that? Yeah, so you can kind of find that and get it started. But until that's comfortable for you, you may just need to play kind of random stuff you know on the appropriate chords until you hear what the right thing is. Because let's say somebody wants to play Blue Ridge Cabin Home, that we all have heard before, but you don't know it. And it just comes up, and you hear the melody over and over again because it's the same in the verse and the chorus, and other people playing their solos. When your solo comes up, you know, as long as you know that the chords are G, C, and D, depending on what, you know, let's say you got your capo on, it's G, C, and D. You know, as long as you're doing something within the appropriate chords, you're going to, you know, you're not going to play the melody. That's not ideal, but you're going to get some information back, which is either, hey, that sounds like the right melody. Or you're going to hear it and say, that's not it. In which case you can try something different. Because let's say you want to play Blue Ridge Cabin Home and you start your solo like this. That doesn't really sound like the beginning of Blue Ridge Cabin Home. Okay, let's try something different. That really doesn't sound like the beginning of Blue Ridge Cabin Home either. If you hear the melody and then you listen to that, your other option, right, is something like that. So that's going to get you closer to understanding it. So to kind of make that all one big answer, if I possibly can, you got to listen really hard, and you got to keep learning songs, and then you got to be able to listen to what you're doing, compare it to what else is happening, and say, is this the same thing or is it different? You know, and whittle it down until you can get it closer and closer. If you can sing the melody, that's even better. If you can sing the melody, you can compare it to what you're doing, right? You know, if you sing this note, those aren't the same note. You know what I mean? Those are all different. I can't really sing, but you know, if you can get to there, if you can sing that note and you can play that, then great. But if when you sing it, you play a different note and it doesn't sound like it's matching up quite right, then got to try something else. Jim says, Clyhammer and Frailing are two different names for the same thing, despite the internet disagreement. Are you, Jim, are you possibly trying to get people to stop arguing on the internet? Isn't that what it's for? I hope you guys all checked out Jim's stream with Nick Hornbuckle. Really cool banjo player. Plays two-finger style. Super interesting. Really great player. And really cool conversation with Jim. What are your views on adjusting the angle of the tailpiece in relation to the head? Do you favor having the tip of the tailpiece angled down towards the head? That's an interesting thing because I don't and haven't had a tailpiece that you can adjust the angle on for quite some time. Because this banjo has a Presto tailpiece, which you can't adjust the angle of. You can only adjust the height. So I don't have a strong feeling about that. But I don't think it's a great idea to have it like at a sharp angle down, probably. Not super sharp anyway. And not, you don't want it up either. Maybe, you know, I think probably maybe just about parallel to the head, maybe. But I haven't used a tailpiece like that in a while, so I can't say. Let's see. Did I miss anything? I might not have missed anything. We might be good. Oh yeah, Jim did that one recently, the Jesse James, right? I love that tune. Not loving my banjo right now. It's not feeling super comfortable to me. So, I've caught up to the questions. So maybe I'll take a few more questions if people have them. But if not, that's totally fine too. We'll be back again next week, or maybe sometime sooner. Who'd you first hear Jesse James from? I think I first heard Jason Davis play it, and then I heard Scott Vestal play it. Those are probably the two versions I've heard the most, and then I've heard a bunch of people play it since then. But all right. Gotta answer these questions. When improvising, getting so far away from the melody, how do you get back to the melody in time or at the right time? It's tough to say. I don't know if there's always going to be a sure way that. I don't know if there's always a sure way to. I mean, you can definitely practice going out on a limb and coming back, but it is going to be a little bit that. It's going to be going out on a limb and coming back, so there's not really a super concrete way to do it. I got to get out of B for a second here just to be able to use the whole fretboard. Feels better anyway. You know, if I was going to play something like well, sometimes what happens is you'll improvise and then you'll find yourself with an opportunity to come back to the melody, and maybe that's where you go. It can be really hard if you want to just say, I'd like to go out somewhere and then come back and land at the melody at this point. That actually can be a little bit harder to do. But if, I don't know what I would use as an example, like, let's use Fireball Mail as an example. Again, it's a great tune. I don't even know if I particularly like what I just played, but I went off into some thing and eventually came back to the melody. And really, it was just, okay, how can I get back to the end of the tune and then start the melody over again, right? Like whatever that thing was. And then just come back to G, right? And then I can... You know, part of it can be... like the jam grass bands that get crazy off. Yeah, I mean, you really have to know where you are in the tune, for one thing. And it can be helpful to learn a couple, licks that have the sound that you like. Just to have the experience of playing something other than the melody, right? Like, trying to think of an example, but I don't really know any jamgrass type songs. Having a hard enough time just staying in tune. But are you counting the whole time? No, not really counting at all. Yeah, I mean, you want to be so familiar with it that you don't have to count, right? When I'm playing something like, I just want something that takes that amount of time, right? So I'm not going to play the whole tune. I'm just going to play that amount of it over and over again and play different things that take the same amount of time. Like all that stuff takes the exact same amount of time to play, however many measures that is. So you maybe try that. Maybe try just like getting through a couple sections of a tune and play a couple different things and see what happens. You really have to think about it in terms of sections, like phrases, right? Like this is one phrase. And then that's another one. That's another one. So it's 4 phrases. So maybe say on the third phrase, I'm going to, on the third phrase, I'm going to do something else. But the other 3 phrases, I'm going to keep the same. So first phrase, same. Second phrase, the same. Third phrase, something else. Fourth phrase is going to be... So, here we go. I don't know what I just played exactly, but whatever it is, it took exactly the right amount of time for that phrase, and then I could jump into the next thing. So if you're not hearing these songs in terms of phrases, it's going to be really hard to know where you are, right? So, yeah, I think that's how I would suggest doing that. Let's see. Do you ever feel like you're going backwards in your ability? Do you ever feel like I'm going backwards in my ability? No, I know what you mean. I do all the time. That's a very common thing. Yeah, sometimes you just wake up and you play and you say, I don't know if I'm really actually going to get any better. I don't know if this is going to work out. What if I'm fooling all 43 of you right now? What if you all think I'm okay at the banjo, but I'm not? What if I'm really, it's all a trick? That's very real, and that happens all the time. But you have to know that there's a difference between the way you feel about something and what the objective reality is. And that can be really difficult because can we really know what the objective, we're getting into all kinds of other stuff here, but yeah, that's a very common thing. But I will say that because I have built the habit of putting in hard work on the banjo, those feelings don't last very long, because even if it's true that I'm going backwards in my ability, my relentless urge to practice every day, even if it's just a little bit, means that I'm going backwards slowly. Maybe that's something. Carrie Kelsey has just subscribed. That's very cool. Thank you, Carrie, for subscribing. Yeah, I should remind everyone, if you feel like subscribing, now's the time. So you can be aware of other live stream stuff that happens or other cool lessons. Check out the rest of my YouTube channel. There's all kinds of really cool lessons that you might enjoy. Let's see. Yeah, Tekla Funk says, what should you do if you live somewhere outside the U.S.? You come to the point in banjo playing where you have no more banjo players. That, you know, you're basically when you've reached the point where nobody can show you nothing where you live. Which happens, you know, happens wherever you live. You might live in a town where you just become there's nobody can show you anything new. And if you live somewhere outside the U.S., then that can be even more trickier because it's not as easy as driving to the next town over or the next state over or whatever. I mean, Skype lessons is probably the best thing you can do with the best teacher you could possibly find. The Artist Works stuff with Noam Pikelny and Tony Trischka, all that stuff is really a good idea. Tony Trischka, Noam Pikelny, Wes Corbett, you know, like all that stuff is probably the best way to get into beyond Scruggs stuff. Also great for Scruggs stuff, but beyond Scruggs stuff, that's probably the best place to go. I mean, I put out lessons about that, but I'm not going to say that I'm a better resource than them, just cheaper. And cheaper because of my level of experience. So, talk about the double hammer on third string, 2 to third, the smeared sound. I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but you probably mean something like that kind of thing. Check out my tab for Pike County Breakdown, and you'll have all the information you need because it's in there, right? Or just find tablature of a song that includes that. Pike County Breakdown is one. What would I do if I like to improve improvisation in melodic style? Right now I'm working on you basically want to yeah, Jonathan, I know you meant you. Yeah. No, I feel the same way often, and I think many people do, so you're not alone. But don't let that define your actual long-term feelings, because that's kind of an irrational fear, not so much a logical, you know, you didn't come to that conclusion after carefully, you know, that you just like one day was like, oh no, what if I'm getting worse? You know, it's not like I did the math and it turns out I'm getting worse, right? That's not really how it works. So improvising melodic style can be very difficult. But try this. So you're playing these melodic scale. That's the lesson you're talking about, the scales that you got from. You know, you really just want to be able to reach the next chord, right? So if I'm playing... Great. I don't know if that's something I really would want to play necessarily, but I went G, C, D, G, C, D, whatever. So what you really want to be able to do is play like a measure of a chord, you know? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then melodic for a measure, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, that kind of thing, right? Just as an example, right? Take a measure of just the rolling through the chord, a measure of melodic stuff, and it's going to be really slow at first, right? You could even have to write it out maybe just to make sure you get each thing just right. If you need to, but that's going to be the key. And then once you can do that, then you can start making choices. Well, I like the sound of this better than that, whatever it is. Which is in the that lesson, that melodic mania thing, whatever is mega melodic thing. You know, that's basically what that is. Just do that going between chords. You know, like pick a chord of the song that you pick the chords in a song that you are trying to play, and see if you can connect them with connect the chords with the scales, right? Like a tune like Temperance Reel, right? Something like that, right? If I wanted to do this little exercise, do a measure of the chord, and then do melodic, and then land on the appropriate chord next, which is G, and then E minor. So G, you know, it sounds like I'm playing the right chords and the right scale and everything. So start with that, and then you can make up your own exercises, right? Like how long to play a chord before you get to the melodic stuff and whatever. You know, once you start doing more permutations of that, then it starts to become something where you get to make choices. You know what I mean? How many beers can you drink before your picking starts sounding like poop? 3 is my limit. Well, lucky for me, my picking always sounds like that. No, yeah, I mean, you can try it. You can try drinking and smoking and whatever before you play, but beware. You know, the more you drink, I think the less you know how you sound. Gotta be careful, right? Is it a good idea to try to learn songs from completely other cultures and arrange them yourself to improve and develop your playing? Try playing jazz on the banjo. Yeah, I used to play a little jazz on the banjo, but it's been a little while because it just isn't as interesting to me right now. I just love bluegrass. But it's a good idea if you want to incorporate those sounds into your playing, or if you want to widen your influences, right? If you wanted to play just jazz banjo, then you should probably just study jazz, right? If you want to play just jazz banjo, it's probably not a good idea to study a lot of like Indian music or maybe Japanese music or whatever. If you just want to play jazz, if you want to be influenced by all those things, then you should definitely learn other styles of music. It just depends what you want, what you want to sound like. Which teachers have you had that have taught you to play this well? Well, I had some teachers here in the U.S. in Maine, just local people that have just showed me things here and there. But then I took lessons with Jason Davis at East Tennessee State. He's a great banjo player. And then I just have spent a lot of time asking a lot of people questions online, like you guys are doing. And I was lucky enough that people answered. And I studied at East Tennessee State University, so that helped with the bluegrass side of things. But there's a lot that I've learned just studying online. I mean, the last 3 or 4 years, I've been putting up 1 or 2 videos every week. And I've learned probably the most of anything on any time playing the banjo. I've probably learned the most during those last 3 years, just because I'm learning some new banjo break or backup thing every single week. And I have to be able to play it every week to record it for the videos. So, you know, there's so much information on YouTube these days for anything you want to learn. So don't be afraid to do some self-directed stuff. You know what I mean? Let's see. When going between chords, would you always play the G melodic scale or scales? Yeah, so for the most part, like if you're in the key of G, like let's say it's G, C, and D, you want to use just the G melodic scale. You know what I mean? Jonathan, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. That is so generous. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Wow, very cool. And what a funny little pair icon. Yeah, you do have the option of I never mentioned this because it seems very strange, but you do have the option of donating either by hey, and there's your notification. Very cool. Yeah, you have the option of donating if you want to via super chat or the link in the description below. Either way is more than appreciated. in these times, right? But don't feel pressured to by any means. So if you're in the key of G, yeah, and the chords are G, C, and D, then you definitely want to use the G major melodic scale, right? You don't want to switch for each chord, because technically you're still in the key of G if you're using G, C, and D, right? Even if it's a C chord, you're still in the key of G. There are some exceptions once in a while. Like, for instance, let's say you're playing in G and you want to go to C. You can play the C melodic scale, but it's not really because you're like in the key of C, really. It's just because that makes it F is for the G7. Makes it G7, right? So there's some exceptions, right? But for the most part, you want to stick with the one key. Whatever key you're in, that's the scale that you want to be playing. You know what I mean? Cool. Okay, so somebody just repeatedly asked for, didn't ask at all. They commanded me to play Foggy Mountain Breakdown, but I think they've left by now. So I think now's a good time to play Foggy Mountain Breakdown, because I think we're about at the end of it here. So I will do just a very brief advertisement for Patreon. You should drop by patreon.com/EliGilbertBanjo, where you can get all the tablature for all my lessons. You can send me messages and I'll respond to them as quickly as I can. There's extra bonus videos. You can watch this live stream after it's over, right? That's pretty cool. And you also get an advance notice of when these live streams are going to happen, so you never miss one. And it's also what makes these videos possible, and it's also what makes my world go around these days. So I appreciate that, and donations and all that are super cool. Very, very much appreciated. I didn't think it would be possible for me to do this as a living, and now I am. So it's every day is kind of amazing in that way. So check out Patreon if you would, and think about subscribing to this channel. It seems like a small thing to do, but it actually makes a gigantic difference. The more people subscribe, the more people YouTube tells to watch my videos, which doesn't really equate to a lot of money per se. That's not really that important to me, but it widens the reach of all this stuff. And then hopefully more people are playing banjo, bluegrass banjo, which would just be a cool world to live in, because there should just be a lot more people playing banjo, right? So you can help by subscribing and hitting the notification bell, because then YouTube will notify you whenever I post a video. I really do love making these videos and doing these live streams, but you may have picked up on the fact that the advertising and the marketing is less than fun, because I'd rather just play. So here is, for the finale of this live stream, is going to be Foggy Mountain Breakdown. We'll see if I can play all the parts. It's going to be a little out of tune up there, but thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. I guess I'll give this a try. I did the wrong break first. It's this one, right? Something like that, I guess. All right. Well, this has been another really fun live stream. Almost got to 2 hours this time. And we'll see you next week for sure, and maybe more, maybe in the middle of the week at some point. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. But until